Welcome to Sermon Q&A. Pastor Michael here with you. I am in the studio with Pastor Craig, Pastor Alex. On January 30th, we finished our series on Jesus in an Insidious World. Pastor Alex, here's a question that I'm excited to hear you process.
Okay.
Why does Jesus's message seem intolerant?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. There are really, I think, two reasons that boil this down for us. So the first is those who would ask the question, like the perspective that creates that question is already warped by culture. It's already, because there are cultures all around the world who would never think of Jesus as intolerant. But something about our culture says, well, we have to, something about his message makes us feel like that's intolerant. So the perspective that we come from, and then the second reason is that, like, even, and we don't really wrap our heads around this, but even the fact that Jesus would give an opportunity for faith and salvation and life, like, that is far more of a grace than we begin to comprehend, right? So, and I think our lack of comprehension, our lack of understanding of how amazing that is what makes us kind of miss out on, because we're looking at the exclusivity of Jesus's message, and that's what's making us go, oh, that seems intolerant to me.
It's weird that if someone's like dying and you outstretch a hand and you say, you can be saved if you grab my hand, and then someone would say that's intolerant.
Right.
Because
I want, like, I want to levitate and stand up, right? Like that's essentially what you're saying, right? Like, I don't want to take your hand. Well, no, it's the only way I can get you up.
Why are you exclusively giving me this?
Right. Like, what's the deal?
So the culture that we're talking about is a pluralistic culture.
Right.
It's absolutely the idea that there's many ways to God. So when Jesus says something like, I am the way, the truth, and the life, we process that by saying he didn't really mean it. Like, no one comes to the Father except through me. Like, that's pretty exclusive.
Right.
But we like Jesus. We just don't like that part of his message. So we have a tendency to kind of filter what we don't like so we can hang on to what we do. Unfortunately, Jesus says, it's all or nothing. And his message is continually exclusive. He was
take up your cross and follow me. I'm the only way.
And he said to the Pharisees, he was constantly calling himself God, and he said, they were ready to stone him because he was so exclusive numerous times.
So the issue then is exclusivity is now seen as intolerant. And those are not the same thing.
They're not
by
the same
way.
thing. Absolutely.
Like, Pastor Matt behind the camera, he said, what did he say? He's like,
it's like walking up to a building and seeing the door there, and I want to get into that building. Oh, well, you go through the door then. No, but I want them to put a door right here because this is where I want to go into the building.
We're not going to demo the whole part of the building. There's a perfectly good door right here.
There's one you can go through. Like this, all you have to do is walk through, right?
Yeah, that's intolerant. Like, what?
Right.
It's exclusive. Right. It's not intolerant.
So there's something just about the reality of pluralism in our culture and all of that has made us go. And I think particularly on issues of relating to religion and faith, like, there's something to say. Like, if you draw any boundaries around these things, if you say that there's only, like, there's clarity and that somebody else might be wrong on these issues, you can say people are wrong about other issues, but on these issues, if you say that somebody is wrong, then that is very intolerant of you. How could you do that?
What a masterful.
I'm sorry, but there's other religions that are way more intolerant. How do they get away with it?
Well, I mean,
the prince of the power of the air is probably inclined to draw people to them, and I mean that's
the Christian culture has so much formed the culture that we live in right now that when we are done with it, there's like a rejection of the thing that formed us.
It's like a kid growing up in their home and they're like done with their parents. I don't want anything to do with that. What a great reframing on the evil one's side to somehow take the reality of exclusion. Anybody who says Jesus is not exclusive does not read the Bible or understand the gospel, and to somehow reframe exclusivity as intolerance. So now, like, intolerance is you have to treat somebody poorly in order to be intolerant. To be intolerant is like it's a dehumanizing of somebody. It's a treating them like dirt because they don't assign to something, and to somehow now make disagreement dehumanizing. That to me is like, wow. So I think what happens with a lot of people is it's a mantra, right? Christians are intolerant because Jesus is exclusive. But if you don't think about that, you can just feel good about that statement.
Lump it in together, right?
Again, and when we talk about mantras, we say there are these one-liners that when you say them, they bypass your head, they go right to your heart, they give you a big hug, and you never think about it. Well, we got to actually use some definitions here. Now, maybe I could tell them there are some Christians that are intolerant.
Right.
But like, I challenge you
and
to
that's true, right?
That is, yeah. But that's different than
Jesus being intolerant.
And again, that's another one of those things where like, okay, come on, rise above. So because one atheist is a jerk, or because 100 atheists are a jerk, does that mean all atheists are jerks? Like, when do we get to just clump people into small categories because a minority does something?
Right. That's like tribalism, right? It's just like, oh, you're in that group, so you must be all of these things.
On every level, I'm like, just use your mind, think about it. Don't buy into the mantras. Like, exclusivity is different than intolerance.
Yeah. And so like my last point on this is that I think we just miss that, like, grace is so much bigger. Like, the fact that Jesus is grace and he was full of grace, that's so much bigger than we begin to comprehend, right? So like, he stood in the place where he deserved to judge and condemn and exclude, right? And what does he do? He enters in, right? He comes and dwells with us. The Word became flesh. And I just think, like, and not only that, but even the fact that he would extend then to people who were betrayers of God and who rejected him and who said, we'll do whatever we want with this creation that you made. Like, the fact that he would even extend an opportunity and be so patient for people to come to faith and come to know him and say, and you know what? I'm opening up this space in my family, and you can be a part of my family now.
Yeah, it was interesting in Jesus' day that he was actually called a friend of sinners. He hung out with tax collectors and prostitutes, and
they didn't call him intolerant.
They did not call him intolerant.
It was only the ones who were threatened by the religious power that called him intolerant.
And it's interesting that those people that called out to him, those people that went to him, and I think there's an acceptance when you teach and you live the life of Jesus in ourselves. We bear the image of God like we should by acting like Jesus would. But I agree with you. I think there's some folks that have made Christianity look intolerant. And we need to get back to the place where we, just being a friend of sinners doesn't mean we're like them.
Right.
It just means that they know that they're accepted. Jesus walked into their world and accepted anyone. In fact, he said, anyone who comes to me will not be cast out. That's pretty tolerant.
Yeah, that's pretty tolerant. Welcoming, accepting.
Could we agree that Jesus was intolerant to people who used power to abuse people? Yeah. And that's something that I think is worth being intolerant
to. And it's very prominent in our world today.
And if we're going to be like people of grace and truth, the people who love and reality and truth are going to respond well, and the people who want to use power to abuse people are going to reject that. And that's understandable. So Alex, thank you for that. Appreciate it. All right. Well, I want to thank you for joining us again on Sermon Q&A. Come back next time. We've got plenty more questions coming your way.